All right, guys, in this lesson, we're going to talk about confusing words, and there are a lot of confusing words in the English language, okay? So you will be able to recognize confusing and irregular spelling of words and be able to correct sentences through taking some notes, doing a little practice, and taking a mastery check. And in this lesson importance, it's really just important. You need to know the difference between different spelling and different usage of words if you're going to be an effective writer and speaker, period, right? Like, you want to make sure that when you're using words, you use them correctly. It drives me insane the amount of influencers that I see misuse the word literally. It actually really drives me crazy. All right, and so it's things like that that's really important for you so that you sound smart and intelligent, okay? So the only real way for me to provide confusing words to you is just to go over some of the most common ones. So for example, accept versus accept. Accept is a verb, which means to receive or to agree with, right? Like you accept an apology. But accept is a preposition, which means all but so many people, or other than so many, right? Like everyone went except for Jane. Affect and effect, right? Affect is a verb. It means to influence, while effect is a result or a consequence, right? So you have an affect is like lack of sleep affects your game. It influences the way you play. Or a lack of sleep has an effect on your game, okay? It has a direct consequence. The effect can also be used as a verb, so you can see why these are so confusing, because it can also mean to bring about or to accomplish something. Like, our efforts have affected our major grade improvement, okay? Usually verb is affect with the A, except when you're talking about it bringing about something, which then becomes the E. So this can be very, very confusing. A hint for this is that affect is action, so A, right? While effect is event, E. So if you can try to remember those two things, then you should be able to use these words properly. How about advise and advice? Okay, if you advise, you are recommending something. If it's advice, it's an opinion or a recommendation, right? So like, you get advice and you advise someone. How about conscious and conscious, okay? Two completely different spelling for a word that sounds the same, but spelled C-I-O-U-S. It's an adjective. It means you're awake or you're aware. The patient remained consciousness, right? They woke up. While conscience, spelled with the science at the end, is more about sense of morality, right? Like, your conscience tells you this or that, or like they talk about like the angel and the devil on your wing, that's your conscience, right? That's the one spelled science at the end. But if you wake up and you become conscious of something, then it means to become aware, and it's spelled differently. Idea and ideal. Ideal can be used in two different ways, but again, these are things that people mix up. Idea as a noun, it's a thought or a belief that you have, right? Jennifer had a great idea. But an ideal as a noun is a representation of perfection. So getting straight A's would be ideal. You can also use ideal as an adjective, standard, like as a standard of excellence or meaning perfection, right? She's an ideal student, right? Like that's what it means, to be excellent. Other confusing words. We were already kind of talking about everyone, which I'm going to present here in a second, but every day and every day also very similar to that, meaning that each day you wake up, right? Every day where it's separated means each and every one, and every day when it's combined as an adjective means a whole or all. Okay, and that's that same idea with everyone. Everyone when separated means each individual, and everyone when it's together puts all of the individuals as a collective. How about just proper use of apostrophes and contractions, okay? It's with no apostrophe is a possessive adjective. The crab had an unusual growth on its shell. Okay, it's possessing the shell. Or it's with an apostrophe is as a contraction, meaning it has or it is. It's still raining, it's been raining. That is a contraction of two words. How about your and your? Making sure that the one with the apostrophe means you are. You should know the difference between there, and there. Okay? One of them is a place. Okay? T-H-E-R-E is a place. T-H-E-I-R is associated with people. And the one with the apostrophe is the contraction for they are. So you really need to know the difference between these words. Okay? And then as a real big note, could've, should've, and would've are contractions of the word have. There's no such thing as could-of, should-of, would-of. It sounds that way when we say it, right? But when we write it, doing it correctly means doing it as a contraction. And then there's some irregular spelling. So let's talk a little bit about these. You have your IE rule. Okay, make sure you write I before E most of the time, but it's I before E except after C, and when it sounds like an A, as in neighbor and way. And this works most of the time, but again, English language sucks, and there are many rules and many exceptions to rules, okay? But as you can see, I before E, in words like relief and believe, niece, chief. But then you have the E before the I in words like receive and deceive and sealing, right? Because there's a C involved in them. Okay? But then there's some irregular ones like freight and eight, which but those sound like the A, even though there's no C before them, right? And so you get the E before the I. And then you have these weird exceptions of that rule, okay? And there is no real way to know the exception except to know it. Able versus able is another irregular spelling that's good to know the difference. Able is if the root word is not a complete word, you use the I. Opposite with the A. Okay, so words like visible, horrible, terrible, right? VIS is not its own word. HORR is not its own word. So you use the able with the I. Again, always some exceptions. And then able with an A is if that root is a complete word. And you drop the E and you add the ABLE, right? Fashionable, laughable, suitable, comfortable, right? Fashion is its own word, that's the root, and because you have a full complete word there, you use the A, fashionable. Okay, laugh is its own word, suit is its own word, depend is its own word, so you use the ABLE. That's it. If you've got this, go work with it. Keep moving on with this lesson. Definitely go back and review if you need to, or let me know if you need to, but really with confusing and irregular words, it's about practice.